The ending to the Australian Grand Prix was complete chaos. In this video, I'm going to analyze where the stewards and FIA went wrong and explain how I think the race should have ended. So let's start out at the beginning to what brought out the red flag in the first place, and that was Kevin Magnussen barely drifting wide and kissing the barrier, causing his tire to blow up and him off on 3 wheels, where he was able to drive next to a Marshall stand, and also the debris from his tire was conveniently placed right next to the Marshalls as well. So I feel like it was clear that this could have been handled through a safety car or even a virtual safety car, but the stewards decided to bring out the red flag anyways. And I think that's because they wanted to finish under racing conditions. We've seen this before in Baku where it has worked in the past, and I can see both sides on this. I know a lot of the drivers were completely upset with the red flag call. It basically ruins all progress they had made, especially Max Verstappen was pissed off because he was ahead so far. But I think it is a good thing to finish under racing conditions. It is a sport for the fans. And I know in previous races, when it finishes under a safety car, there is a lot of outrage. So I think they did do the right thing in pulling the red flag. So next, let's talk about the actual restart itself. And I think there are multiple reasons why it went so wrong, both on the driver's side and the FIA side. So let's start with the drivers. You could see on TV that the sun was definitely affecting them, setting through the trees and almost blinding the drivers on the restart. Another big factor is that low fuel, cold tires. It's hard to judge where your braking zone is this late in the race because it changes over time as the track breaks in. And also there were just 2 laps left of racing, so the drivers were going to go full push mode, because if you lose a place, you're likely not going to get it back because of that short stint. On the FIA side, I think there's one key factor they messed up on, is that the cars had to follow the safety car to the starting grid, unlike what they do in normal race starts, where they have an entire lap by themselves where they get to choose the pace and really warm up their tires to their liking. So I think all these combined show why we lost 6 cars at that restart and why eventually another red flag was flown. The most debated and heartbreaking part of the ending of this race was the Carlos Sainz 5-second penalty for hitting Alonso, which in my opinion, it's a tough one, because I think in any normal race, you would give that penalty. You saw a similar incident in the Austin GP last year where George Russell hit Carlos Sainz and he called the 5-second penalty not enough, like George got off lightly. But I think you have to take into account that they did not get through one sector of racing, so the grid restarted, and Alonso didn't lose out on this. He still finished on the podium. So I know the FIA gives out penalties no matter the situation or scenario, but I think the scenario is the biggest part of this penalty and is why I think the FIA needs to make a little change and revisit this idea of they don't take into account the scenario. And what adds to my frustration is in the back behind them, Logan Sargent made a sloppy error under braking, couldn't get the car stopped, and ran straight into the back of Nick DeVries. And in my opinion, this is almost a worse penalty than Alonso and Sainz. They are in the back of the grid, yes, but both their races were ended off this. And the FIA didn't even choose to acknowledge it. It doesn't matter if you're in the points or at the back of the grid, there needs to be consistency. So now that that's all out of the way, let's have a little fun here and see what I would have wanted to happen after all that chaos, after the red flag restart. I think it would have been really interesting to see a little mini mad dash to the finish line, because if you look at the Australian Grand Prix track, they line up behind the finish line. So that means they could have had the cars start behind it and just had a 100-meter dash to the finish line, and it would have been interesting because if Max gets a bad start, Lewis or someone else could have gotten ahead by inches, which would be one of the most unique and entertaining finishes to a race that we have ever seen. Lastly, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts on what I said, what you would have done differently. My name is Aiden. Goodbye.